And now she was walking quickly. The ground beneath Tabitha Penright looked like cushions of cloud, a disconcerting appearance as you stepped on them, waiting to fall through. But she had been here long enough to have grown accustomed to them and knew that you had to find the spot in the ground, in the sides, sky, to get through into the memory. For that's what this place was made from, otherwise you could walk forever. If time actually moved here. But it didn't. Worldly constraints such as time, space, dimensions, weather, temperature. They didn't exist here. Tabitha had always imagined what the world beyond the veil would be like, and it was exactly like this. She was fortunate enough to be able to get here, come here. Or unfortunate enough, Tabitha corrected herself, leaving wispy footprints in her wake, which suddenly reformed as though she had never trod there. What was to come she would not wish on her own worst enemy. Not that she had any enemies that she knew of. But, what he had asked her to do. What she had agreed to do. What was supposed to be done. That was not yet. Now she had the tea. Now she could wonder at the place, probably the only person ever to have wondered about it. Not the only person. In Harry Potter and the Story That Never Was, Cecilia Frobisher had wondered. Tabitha knew that she must have been here, despite her claims only to have dreamed it up. It didn't matter. Things like that seldom did to Tabitha. Untruths, concealments, political spin, all of them passed her by. They were nothing of any use and had never helped her with her mysteries. What she did miss, however, was her work that she had laid aside, her technological work. Vincent had given her a compelling argument why she should do the work she was doing with non-wizard technologies and incorporating it into the wizard world first, and leave the veil second. It was tempting. But he didn't know why she had chosen to act as she had done. Besides, application of new discoveries could not begin until the latter had been fully investigated. Perhaps she should not be doing as Severus had asked of her. But deep down Tabitha hated what Grindelwald and Dumbledore were doing, hated the principle of it. Were they to succeed and bring about mass conjurism in Europe, the freedom to explore the mysteries she so loved would disappear, she would be imprisoned in the world without the means to use her gift. She may even be terrorized for lack of wizardliness, something which was still a sensitive point, having endured many a taunt at Hedgewoods when she was much younger. Imagine having to live like that. It would be like being in prison. But, there was no need to think of that now, Tabitha assured herself. Even she would not know precisely the way back to the veil if she were asked at that moment. All she had accomplished so far here, the memories she had viewed, some investigated, some discounted. She had done a large proportion of the work so far. The toughest was yet to come, however. The memories that had not yet been sent here were still to be explored. Emotionally wrought memories that were yet to be stolen and locked away here. They were the ones that were needed for the plan in which she was complicit to begin fully her work here, and to end. It was easy to understand why people had trapped the veil in the mysteries and why this place was such a cache for those thoughts which people wanted to access later, or just forget about entirely. They had enshrouded it with magic and also, with a more powerful curtain, a curtain of mockery of those who studied mysteries. Who would want to be a mysteria? Those who studied plants were cool in comparison. Only those with the rarest of gifts like herself, with the compulsion to work with objects that no one else could understand, whose lives were like a living depression when they were denied the chance, only those wizards would dare try. Had she been a different person, had she been, say, Caius Lupin, she might easily imagine what it felt like now to be a god, to be able to change things at a whim. And so very dangerous a power, too. Perhaps people like her, who lived for the urge to unmystify things and not for glory and honor, perhaps that was a reason her blighted gifts were bestowed on her. Tabitha trod carefully now. The memory on which she was treading felt thinner underfoot, and she would have to be careful lest she fell straight into it and be noticed. She had the chance to wonder now, and that was happiness itself. Tabitha knelt down and pushed her hand through, parting the matter with her hands. She peered into the sight of the Hufflepuff girls' dorm at Hedgewoods. Daytime. A girl was unpacking a bag and reading a letter. It was making her smile. Any other clues? Bright sunshine. The start of term by the look of it. A memory stored, Tabitha surmised, in a portable pensieve. Perhaps a letter from home. She peered in deeper, and smiled. The girl was removing what looked like new clothes, books and sweets. Unmistakably so. Tabitha leaned upwards then got to her feet. Interesting. Not what she needed, though. And she had examined many such memories that students that year had chosen to keep, like visual entries in a pink, fluffy, lockable diary, boring and irrelevant to anyone but that girl. There were far fewer Hedgewoods memories that she had chanced upon recently. Nothing of Quidditch match victories or inter-house competitions of which she knew Severus hated but went along with anyway for the students. No sniff of the disturbing memories that she knew would begin her work, tax her, keep her on her toes. Smiling again, Tabitha walked gingerly past the hole she had made in the memory as it gained more form and proceeded off in the direction of another, smaller and a little thinner by the look of it. She was in no hurry to begin, for she knew it would be the end of musing and surmising of the wonder of the place. And what an end it would be! But for now, Tabitha had time to wonder. 88,888,888. How could all these people be connected with her? Could all redheads do magic? What had caused it? Was it because she was here, in this new life, or this place? If so, why was she unable to do magic before? Was it merely genetics? The questions had been buzzing around Cecilia's mind so long since she had had the conversation with Ragnhild about her research that they were just now background noise, like when a person becomes accustomed to a headache that will not shift. Who would answer her questions? Were they even answerable? She had been tempted to talk to her friend, to discuss her research further, but Ragnhild had been more than a little absent when it came to lessons, students clamoring for her to teach them so they can pass their particular exams being the main reason. Not just Professor Anderson either, other professors had been preoccupied with the demand from Strasbourg to cooperate, share and be open, an anathema to the way that the school fundamentally operated. She would have to wait. There was one question Cecilia could answer herself, though, her own range and extent of magical ability, on an ad hoc basis. She had something to think about at least for, if she stopped distracting herself for too long, the reality of her having been returned and still remaining at Durmstrang began to seep into her will to keep going. Turning from the window, where the palladium-colored waves sheeted over the sea's surface and wrapped themselves around the tower below, Cecilia sighed inwardly. It still made her miserable that she was there, at Durmstrang, and not with Septimus, no real idea about Remus and how and when he would ever get well. Every night she went to sleep with thoughts of her son and her husband on her mind, knowing full well that if she were to call Callias's bluff he almost certainly, if not definitely, have her imprisoned. But, while she could pursue it, Cecilia had decided, fascinating though it was, she would not. While it might entertain her thoughts and make her wonder, she would stick to facts, the facts that Callias had demanded of her, writing down precisely and lengthily the goings-on at Hedgewoods. Lengthily being the operative word. Give the wizards something weighty to wade through, she thought malevolently. Turning from the window, with the gales brewing below her window, so tall the Durmstrang tower was that where the systems were visible upside down, so to speak, there was another thing on her mind. What about the potion needed for Remus? Cecilia had deliberately not involved herself in that either, mainly because she trusted Severus but also because she felt too close to think clearly about her once estranged husband. Cecilia had been too close with the lycanthropy potion she had tried it in the other place, though she hadn't known it at the time. Perhaps if she had shared more with the Severus Snape back then he might have solved it with her, quicker, more accurately. Instead, her husband perished in Azkaban. Cecilia rubbed her eyes, then her temples. If she could keep out of this, keep from her strength of will forcing her point with regard to Remus. She shook her head. Keep thinking about this apparent magical ability, she told herself. Keep thinking about genetic connections. Then you can't be instrumental in any harm that may come as a result. Throwing a look towards the unglazed windows, she made preparations for bed. She was ready for the next day's lessons, for those questions about chromosomal crossover that were inevitable. Then afterwards, perhaps if she didn't feel so wrung out, she would have time to see Ragnhild and add many leaves to ever-expanding notebook of information for her brother-in-law. Maybe even the work within the notebooks would be disseminated amongst the reciprocators, ran her thoughts as Cecilia stared at the huge stone blocks in the near darkness, the harshness of the cold blowing from the still raging storm taken away by sporadic bursts of heat from the fire. Perhaps they would enjoy taking apart the information within them. The burden would be on them, of course, should they decide to brand her a fool again, as the work within was mere fact reporting, unlike the diary of hers. Fool she had been, Cecilia knew. Oh yes, they would take it apart, right enough. Henrietta Edwards twisting it all the way. Ha! Cecilia spat the word at the wall. Let them choke on it. It's a pity the Durmstrang students weren't a little like that though. The thought filtered through to her foremind, replacing the brooding clouds of painful evocation with that of the blank-faced students whom she would teach the next day, pushing her for detail, writing it all down, no question of validity. Oh, for the days at Hogwarts, in time past, when someone would have said to her, in her guise as Squib, "But how do you know that? What proof is there?" Probably someone like Draco Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. The thought of the boy back there, now a grown-up wizard, no hint of family darkness surrounding Voldemort. Draco Malfoy, the president of the Council of Wizards. Malfoy, who openly declared his abhorrence at the activities of Albus Dumbledore and his colleague and lover Gellert Grindelwald. Malfoy, who was not the boy in Slytherin house, defended to the hilt by Severus Snape. Malfoy, the boy who sought at every opportunity to make fun of his new Mole Studies teacher. European. Images of the consequence of even using the word Mole here began to fill her mind. Arrest, court, fine. And Cecilia was standing before a jury, the judge, whose face was obscured, shaking his gavel at her, remonstrating her for using the word. Her mouth opened to defend herself, to say that she was only using it to describe her. Someone shouting that she could do magic, so she was a liar, and therefore in contempt of court. The jury, who were the reciprocators all sitting the Potters, the Weasleys. Sirius Black. Henrietta Edwards the prosecutor, her face contorted in mocking. Cecilia looked towards her counsel, Severus Snape. He was due to speak as her advocate. Henrietta declaring she was a liar again. Cecilia turned to look at Snape as each opportunity to defend her passes in silence. Cecilia felt the shock melt to confusion before giving way to hatred, not to Snape but towards the reciprocators. The jury who had begun to shout her guilt. Anger. Cecilia, now sitting bolt upright in her bed, in her now icy room, felt it in the pit of her stomach, dissolving away as the here and now penetrated her consciousness. It pulsed back as she pulled the thick, reindeer skin bed cover over her cotton sheets, lying down again and rolling over one edge, snuffing out the draft. Why did she feel so angry still? She stared, open-eyed into the darkness. Because all come to the surface again, the reason that she was here. But, Cecilia realized, she felt angry with Snape too. Why? Because he hadn't defended her at the time. He had allowed Cleus's decision to return her to Durmstrang to unfold without so much as an utterance, to her knowledge. In fact, Cecilia noted bitterly, his silence was permission for it to happen. Why? To make her to realize where she belonged. How easy it would have been to have stopped Cleus, to save her from all of this. Was it that Snape was interested in what she would unearth too? Did he know that she would find interfering in his progress with Remus's potion irresistible? To let things run their course. Working with Snape at Hedgewood, Cecilia had heard him mutter these words so often. She had wanted to him on more than one occasion, for, while she was impulsive when she believed she was right, Cecilia would think about her own actions where Severus Snape did not seem to ... He let things run their course. But not even when the clique within the reciprocators were at their worst. Cecilia had wanted to hammer on his chest, but had imagined the triumphant curl of the lip because she had been irked by him. They had talked professionally when they had last conversed, in August. Cecilia had kept the information he had described, and more out of spite for Callias, she had expressed her wretchedness at her foolish trusting of the reciprocators. Of some of the reciprocators. Something, despite everything, somehow, felt right. It was right she was here, not just at Durmstrang, but here and not there. Perhaps there had always been a shred of her that had clung to the old place. Cecilia felt herself comparing things here so often with there. In the old place she had cared so much about the potion, Remus's even more so than that of Harry's, and the information she had been the direct result of her being here now, even though she had pushed herself to try to unravel his lycanthropy. She had gone about declaring herself the only one who could help her husband. Remus had been killed there, clinically executed because of his lycanthropy. Surely his fate was better here? Only marginally so, Cecilia concluded. Anyone bitten had been imprisoned as a security measure. Callias again, using language to sanitize potentially suspect human and wizard rights breaches. But that feeling again. Cecilia felt sure that, if she were to crack the lycanthropy her way, not just rely on that which Snape as a young boy wizard, she was convinced it would lead her to the potion for vampirism. And then, in her mind's eye that all evaporated, leaving behind was a nugget of purity, something, even if Cecilia were to have the rest of eternity to describe and the eloquence of a poet, she could never put into words. She would do neither. It wouldn't matter. The cogs were already in motion. Where the thought had come from Cecilia neither knew nor cared. But, even when she got up the next morning, taught her work for the day, had a conversation with Ragnhild, waited for her to owl her research information to her colleague from Xpitons who had been told to expect it under the European Council diktat, heard the wizard express the opinions of the other professors at Durmstrang who were complaining about the research transparency law foisted on them. Listened to Ragnhild tell her about the competition for the European Ministry employment that her daughter Crystalia had to enter. Despite all of this, Cecilia knew deep down that all this was right. If only it felt right that she was away from Septimus and Remus.